A debt is a shape carved into flesh. It is the line between a man and what he owes, the weight he carries even as his body thins and his bones yellow. It is a number, inked in ledgers and burned into the minds of those who keep them. But above all, a debt is an expectation. It is the certainty that what was taken will be reclaimed, if not by coin, then by time, labor, or flesh. I have spent my life ensuring that certainty remains unbroken. I stand in the servitor's chamber, poring over a slab of metal etched with figures. The tally marks, the transaction records, the labor quotas. It is all here, compressed into raw calculation. My eyes move from one row to the next, measuring the costs, the increments of survival. It is not the numbers themselves that trouble me, it is the men they represent. I know their faces. I know the precise weight of their bodies before the machines take their due. They are part of the Wrath's breathing sum, the fuel that turns its engines, the hands that mend its hull when the void chews away at our bulkheads. Some will pay in work, others in hours they will not see return to them. A few will pay in pounds of themselves because their quota is higher than what their bodies can sustain. They will line up at the servitor's station, roll up a sleeve, or offer up a leg if their debts are deeper. There are methods for ensuring continued function after a tithe is taken. Not kindness, only necessity. I was born into this. My father before me, my grandfather before him. The debt that binds me was written long before my first breath, before my mother's hands clenched into fists at the sight of another son marked for servitude. She is dead now. My father is dead too. Not all at once, but over time, with each line he recorded, each payment he accepted, until the day he had nothing left to give but himself. He met his debt with dignity. He did not beg when they came to take him. I wonder if I will die the same way. Lord Varan does not speak to men like me. He does not speak to anyone, not truly. His words are carved from static, erratic bursts of logic and command, transmitted through the ship's aging vox relays. No one aboard the unyielding Wrath has seen him with their own eyes, not in years, perhaps not in centuries. There is no need. The Wrath itself is his voice. His law is written into the ship's steel bones, encoded in the sputtering glow of command displays and carried in the voices of his officers. They call him the Bone-Handed, a title earned, not given. Some say his true hand was taken in a duel against one of his fellow lords, back in the days when they still ruled as a pantheon. Others whisper that he removed it himself, offering his own flesh to the war engines in some moment of divine madness. What remains is a construction of polished white alloy, seamless and cruel, a thing of forgotten craftsmanship. His officers claim it never decays, never rusts. It is proof that he has surpassed all weakness, that his mind and body have outlived the frailty of mere men. That, of course, is a lie. Lord Varen is dying. Or if not dying, then something worse. The mind that once commanded entire fleets is now fractured, breaking apart inside its steel tomb. Every transmission from his chamber carries evidence of decay. Static, repetitions, pauses that stretch too long between words. One decree may contradict another. His laws turn in upon themselves, mutating with each day that passes. He speaks of the Wrath as though it is both his body and his child, as though he cannot distinguish between himself and the ship anymore. It is his officers who translate his broken proclamations into orders that can be followed. Officers who whisper among themselves of what might happen when he finally slips too far into madness to function. None dare speak of succession, not yet. He is still Lord Varen, still a hollow lord, still capable of wrath. But the edges are fraying, even the lowest decks can feel it. A warship without a ruler is a dead thing, and none aboard the unyielding Wrath wish to be buried with it. The chamber is small, but not a prison. No space aboard the unyielding Wrath is a prison, not in the way the free men think of it. The ship itself is the cage, the corridors are its bars. We do not leave, we do not escape. The Wrath moves across dead systems, waging its slow, endless war against warships just like it, each carrying its own cargo of men, fuel, and suffering. There is no home to return to, no planet that is ours, no soil that remembers us. We belong to the ship as surely as its guns and engines do. A chime sounds, dull and metallic. The hall outside my chamber stirs with movement. The next round of payments will be collected soon, and I must be there to ensure the balance remains intact. I rise, smoothing the thick fabric of my station robes. The material is dense enough to block out radiation from the ship's deeper corridors, but the weight is suffocating. A reminder draped over my shoulders. I fit my servitor's gauntlet over my left hand, pressing it into place until the ports connect. There is a momentary tingle as the interface syncs with my biometrics, flashing the dull green of authorization. The device is standard, capable of scanning records, logging transactions, and, if necessary, dispensing punishment. The corridors of the Wrath are narrow here, cramped by overgrowths of wire and conduits. Some sections of the ship have aged poorly, their walls patched with scrap metal and polymer plating. The deeper decks are worse, places where men work in shifts to keep the war engines fed, where the heat peels skin raw, where the air thickens with something metallic that isn't quite rust. But here, near the servitors' stations, the atmosphere is controlled. The men move in rigid lines, hands curled into fists or tucked behind their backs. They do not meet my eyes, but they feel it. They know that I see them, that I measure them against the debts they carry. A man steps forward, broad, heavy with muscle, sweat gleaming along his collar. "My due is paid," he mutters. I scan his record. The entry confirms it. A week's labor completed without delay, logged and processed. I nod, motioning him forward. The next man follows, then another. Each one pauses for verification, for the confirmation of what they owe. Some hesitate, their numbers unfulfilled. These are the ones who will offer flesh instead. I watch as a younger man, barely out of adolescence, extends a shaking arm. The gauntlet hums as it verifies the amount required. He does not look at me, only at the dull metal tool that will do the work. There is no ceremony, no cruelty. The incision is clean. A strip of flesh, precise in length and depth, is excised. A wrap is applied, the wound sealed with a sterile patch. He stumbles slightly but does not protest. He has seen it done before. I sign the record, noting the payment. He is free of his debt until next time. The cycle continues, but order is only half the truth. There is another side to the wrath, one I have seen only glimpses of. Beyond the quotas, beyond the debts, there are the things that sustain this ship in ways no ledger can fully explain. The war engines are the heart of it. Massive reactors, ancient beyond knowledge, each one a monument to a time when these ships were built by hands more skilled than ours. They do not run on fuel alone. If they did, we would have perished long ago. Instead, they take life, the charge of bioelectric energy drawn from human bodies, drained in precise increments to keep the ship's power supply stable. It is not my duty to oversee the engines. That belongs to the machine priests, the robed figures who tend the reactor cores with a reverence that borders on worship. Their faces are hidden behind tarnished visors, their hands covered in script, rows of delicate engraving cut into steel-plated skin. They speak in a language of murmured rites, their voices distorted by vox grills embedded in their throats. Some claim they are more machine than man, their flesh grafted with conduits that allow them to hear the ship itself. I do not know if I believe that, but I do know they hold knowledge that others do not. The officers tolerate them because the wrath still functions under their care, because when a system fails or a segment of the ship goes dark, the priests are the ones who repair it, or more often the ones who appease it. The ship does not always obey mechanical logic. There are times when it demands something else. The energy it takes from men is meant to be carefully rationed, drawn in cycles that allow the drained to recover before their next contribution. But I have heard stories, murmurs from the lower decks, whispers from men who have worked too near the core. When the ship is in distress, When the reactors flicker and fail, the priests do not always wait for quotas. There are sacrifices, not rumors, not myth. I have seen the logs, entries that do not match any debt ledger, names that do not exist anywhere else aboard the Wrath. There is no record of their service, no record of their end, only that their absence coincided with the ship's survival. I do not ask about these things. To question too much is to invite notice, and aboard the unyielding Wrath, attention is often fatal. When the last man passes through, I retreat back toward the servitors' archives. The officers will demand their reports soon, and I must prepare the ledgers for submission. I prefer the solitude of the records chamber. It is a place of order, of certainty. But as I sift through the latest entries, cross-referencing logs and verifying payments, my hand stops. A discrepancy. A number that does not belong. I frown, adjusting the display. The record is there, but it is wrong. An unrecorded debt, a transaction that should not exist. Debts are immutable. They do not simply appear. I run a secondary check, skimming through archives, searching for a missing notation, but there is none. The debt is real, it has been assigned, but no origin, no trace of its entry. I sit back, staring at the data. A mistake? No, there are no mistakes. A debt must always be paid. But what happens when a debt exists that no one remembers owing? I have reviewed the numbers a dozen times. The ledger does not lie, and yet this entry is a contradiction. A debt with no name attached, no labor owed, no flesh tithe recorded. It sits there, a silent anomaly, wedged between the usual figures like a parasite unnoticed in a body too used to suffering to recognize infection. I do not report it, not yet. I close the record, imprint the figures into memory, and leave the servitor's station with the quiet unease of a man who has stepped over a line he did not know was drawn. The Wrath moves around me, endless corridors stretching outward, each bulkhead reinforcing the weight of generations spent in servitude. Men trudge between their appointed stations, their bodies bent by expectation, their eyes focused on the ground ahead. A ship like this does not change. It does not allow deviation. It endures because deviation is punished, because order is kept at all costs. But there are cracks. I see them as I pass through the labor districts, where the lowest tier debtors perform the unending work of maintaining the Wrath's body. Usually these men speak little. They save their voices for the work orders barked at them, for the brief moments they are allowed to exchange words before returning to the grind. But today, there is an edge to them, a tightness in their shoulders, a flicker in their glances toward the officers that stride between them. Dissension does not begin with violence. It begins with these things: small hesitations, changes in posture, the kind of silence that carries too much weight. The officers are watching too. Their movements are sharper, their orders clipped. I catch sight of Lieutenant Harlan, one of the more senior enforcers, his mechanical arm flexing as he surveys the workers. His augmentations are crude, built more for function than elegance, exposed wiring running along his shoulder, servos humming when he moves. His eyes, though, are untouched, sharp, suspicious. I keep my own expression blank as I pass him. He gives me a nod, and I return it. We are both enforcers, in our own ways. He collects obedience through force. I do it through records. Both methods are effective, and both make men hate us in equal measure. When I reach my destination, the data crypt, where older records are stored, I key in my access and step inside. Rows of vault-like interfaces stretch into the dark. The air is thick here, stagnant from cycles spent untouched. It is a place meant for figures, not men. I sift through the archives, searching for anything that might explain the debt I found earlier. If this is an error, it is not recorded here. If it is something worse, I see no trace of it. I am about to give up when I hear movement behind me. I turn, keeping my stance neutral. A figure steps from the shadows between the archives, his face lined with age and caution. His uniform is marked with the insignia of a senior accounts clerk, but I know him by name. Luth, an old servitor, older than me, older than my father had been when the wrath took him. He has been here long enough to know where the real power lies. Not in the decrees of Lord Varen, nor in the weapons of the officers, but in the ledgers that dictate what a man is worth. "You shouldn't be here," Luth says, his voice steady but quiet. I meet his eyes. "Neither should you." A dry smile ghosts across his face. Then I suppose we've both overstepped. I study him, weighing the meaning behind his presence. He has no reason to be here. Clerks do not visit the archives unless summoned, unless duty demands it. "You're looking for something," he continues. "Something you don't want others to see." I say nothing. Luth exhales, a slow, measured sound. "You're not the first." That makes me pause. Not the first. The silence stretches between us. In the distance, the mechanical chatter of the Wrath's data scribes continues, the ship cataloguing itself, recording its own decay with the diligence of a priest chronicling prophecy. "Others have searched these records before," Luth says. "Men who asked too many questions. None of them lasted long." His words are not a warning. They are a statement of fact. I should walk away. I should return to my station, submit my ledgers, and let this debt slip back into the void where it belongs. Instead, I say, "What happened to them?" Luth's expression does not change. They vanished. It is the way he says it that disturbs me most. No embellishment, no theatrical whispers, just a simple truth delivered plainly. I step back, forcing my mind to quiet itself. The Wrath is a machine of order. It has no patience for anomalies, no space for records that do not belong. And yet here we are. Luth watches me for a moment longer, then turns to leave. But before he does, he says, "Be careful what debts you try to collect, Brannick. Some are meant to be forgotten." He disappears into the maze of archives, leaving me alone with the numbers. I return to my quarters with my mind still turning over what I have learned. The Wrath continues its slow, unending course through the void, its war engines consuming, its officers patrolling, its debts accumulating. But I see things differently now. I see the way the officers move, tense, expectant. I see how the workers linger in small groups, their voices hushed but urgent. I see how the machine priests have become more frequent in their excursions beyond the reactor chambers, their whispers growing more fervent. Something is shifting. The Wrath does not change. It does not bend, it does not break. And yet, the cracks are forming. A ship, like the unyielding Wrath, is not made to be explored. It is a thing of corridors and boundaries, of locks and partitions, of places where men go and places where men do not return. There are districts where rations are distributed, where debts are recorded, where bodies work until their usefulness is spent. But beyond those, there are deeper places. The ship is vast enough to swallow generations, to keep secrets that outlive those who tried to bury them. I think of Luth's warning, of the nameless men who searched before me, and I wonder if their bones are now part of the walls I pass. The ledger I found still weighs in my thoughts. A debt, unaccounted for. A debt without an owner. I could have let it go, allowed it to slip beneath the endless procession of figures. But the numbers do not make sense, and I have spent my entire life making sense of numbers. So I go where I should not. The lower decks stretch beneath the known parts of the Wrath. This is where the ship's body grows rotten. Whole compartments have been abandoned here, sealed off by past generations when repairs became too costly, when stabilizers failed, when radiation leaks made the air sear the lungs. But men still go where they must, and some debts are worked in places the officers do not bother to patrol. I pass workers who have the look of creatures that have adapted to darkness, bodies wrapped in scavenged fabric, faces turned away. Their debts are different from those above. The ledgers do not reach this far, not in ways that matter. Here, debt is collected through survival. Men trade tasks for food, for tools, for a promise that their corpses will not be stripped for parts when they finally fail. I am not welcome here, and I do not expect to be. I wear the station of a servitor, and that makes me a threat. There are no free men aboard the Wrath, but there are those who suffer more openly, and those who enforce the suffering. I find who I am looking for near the remains of an old auxiliary junction, where rusted conduits split and die against the bulkhead. Vesk, a name known in the debtor's undercurrent. Not an officer, not a priest, not a man with any recorded authority, but he knows things. Information moves through him, whispered in trades, passed in exchanged favors. He sees me approach and does not pretend to be surprised. He is smaller than I expected, his frame lean but coiled, like a man accustomed to moving before he is caught. His hands are gloved, fingers marked with scars. Scavenger's hands, quick and searching. "You've come far down, servitor," he says, tilting his head. "Strayed from your ledgers." I ignore the provocation. "I'm looking for an entry that shouldn't exist, a debt recorded but never paid, with no name attached. You know anything about that?" Vesk exhales through his teeth, something like amusement but colder. He leans back against the bulkhead, glancing past me as if scanning for unseen listeners. "Debts with no name," he murmurs. Now there's a concept. I wait, knowing that silence can be as useful as words. He studies me, then shrugs. I've seen things disappear. Names, ledgers, people. But nothing truly vanishes on the Wrath, does it? It just moves, gets shifted to where it's less likely to be noticed. His words press against something in my mind, something unspoken. I recall the logs I glimpsed before, the names I had not recognized, the missing men, entries that did not match any standard record of labor, of debt, of survival. Luth's warning returns unbidden. None of them lasted long. Vesk watches my expression change and his mouth curves into a humorless smile. "You're starting to understand, aren't you? Some debts aren't meant to be paid, some are meant to be erased. And when something gets erased on the Wrath, it usually means one thing." I do not ask him to explain. I already know. The war engines, the Wrath's heart, the core of its power, of its consumption. Men fuel the ship in more ways than one. Their labor keeps its weapons armed. Their blood feeds its rituals. Their bodies become part of its function. The ship does not only run on old fuel and scavenged reserves, it takes something else when it must. Vesk tilts his head slightly. "You're not the first to ask about this, you know. You might be the last, though, if you keep asking the wrong people." He nods, satisfied with whatever he sees in my expression, and steps back into the shadows of the corridor. I do not return to my station. The ship's reactor chambers lie deep in the lower levels, past the sanctioned maintenance sections, past the places where even the lowest tier workers are allowed to go. To access them is not easy, but a servitor has ways of moving where others cannot. The machine priests tend the engines. They have no master but the ship itself, no loyalty beyond what keeps it running. Their presence has always been a thing apart, something most avoid when possible. The officers tolerate them because they are necessary. The workers fear them because they are unknown. I do not fear them, but I do not trust them either. I move through the corridors leading toward their domain. The air shifts as I draw closer, warmer, thicker, in a way that is not quite right. The ship should not feel like this. When I reach the entrance to the reactor sanctum, I stop. The doorway is sealed, its frame carved with old symbols etched by hands that no longer exist. A voice breaks the silence. "You do not belong here, servitor." I turn. A figure stands at the edge of the chamber, half lit by the glow of the failing lumen strips overhead. His robes are dark, marked with the sigils of the priesthood of the coil, the sect that maintains the Wrath's reactors. His face is hidden behind the mask all machine priests wear, expressionless metal, the suggestion of a human skull beneath. Men have gone missing, erased from the ledgers. I think you know why. The priest's posture does not shift, he does not deny it. What do you think debt truly is, servitor? The priest tilts his head. You track numbers. You measure worth. You believe men owe their labor, their service, their bodies. And when their time is spent, when they have no more to give, you sign the record, and they are accounted for. But who signs the final record, Thalen Brannick? Who decides when a man's worth is spent? I do not speak. The priest nods as if satisfied. Go back to your ledgers, servitor. Do not look where debts are settled beyond paper. I hold his stare for a long moment. Then I turn and walk away. The ship feels different as I move through its corridors, though I know it has not changed. It is only me. The machine priest's words stay with me. Who decides when a man's worth is spent? I should return to my station, submit my reports, let the figures pass through my hands without question, as I have done my entire life. But the ledger in my mind has already been altered. I see gaps where I had once seen certainty. I see numbers without names, debts without owners, and I cannot make sense of them. The wrath does not like things that do not make sense. Before I can decide my next step, the message arrives. A command delivered in cold, unfeeling words. I am summoned. The order comes without explanation, as all such orders do. An officer delivers it in clipped, functional words, his voice devoid of curiosity or concern. I am to report to the throne chamber immediately. The weight of it is enough to still the breath in my chest. A servitor does not belong there. The chamber is deep within the wrath, past the ship's administrative levels, past the domains of officers and priests alike. Few ever step beyond its threshold. Fewer still return. I make the walk alone. The corridors that lead to Lord Varan's sanctum are different from the rest of the ship. They are older, untouched by the layering of repairs and repurposed metal that define so much of the Wrath's anatomy. The walls are engraved with lines of script, ancient, unreadable. They are neither decorative nor merely historical. They are something else, something binding. At last, I reach the entrance. The maw. That is what the officers call it. The doors are not true doors. They are a wound in the ship's structure, a jagged rent of metal that has been sealed and unsealed 1,000 times. It is a threshold that devours those who cross it. 2 sentinels stand at either side, their armor heavy, their faces hidden behind sculpted masks. The entrance opens before me, and I step inside. The throne chamber is vast. It does not resemble the rest of the Wrath. There are no functional displays, no terminals, no evidence that this place is connected to the command of a warship. It is a hollow, cavernous thing, a cathedral built for no god, only a man who has outlived the concept of humanity. Lord Varan sits at its center. He does not move. He does not need to. His body is encased in iron and age, the remnants of what was once a man fused with the mechanisms that keep him tethered to existence. Tubes coil from his back, thick and knotted, disappearing into the floor. His limbs are steel, his fingers long and jointed like a machine's. But his face is human. Or was, once. His skin is stretched, thin as parchment, colorless as something long desiccated. His jaw is sharp, as if his skull has begun to assert itself over the flesh that no longer remembers how to contain it. His eyes, metal, black, depthless, glint as he turns them toward me. I bow, not out of reverence, but because I must. Thalen Brannick, his voice grates, raw with static, as if distance lies between each syllable. Servitor, bookkeeper of lives. His voice is the ship's voice, carried through the failing comm relays, reverberating through the Wrath's broken frequencies. When he speaks, it is as if the ship itself bears down upon me. Your numbers are in discord. I do not understand, my lord, I say carefully. A sharp, electric burst crackles through the space. It is laughter, or something like it. You seek a debt that was never meant to be counted, and now you count yourself among those who have seen it. The pressure in my chest tightens. He knows. He tilts his head, the motion jerky, mechanical. Do you believe yourself immune to debt, servitor? No one is immune, my lord. Correct, Varan hisses, his head twitching, A debt must always be paid. His hand lifts, the bone hand, the relic of his long reign. White metal, seamless, unnatural in its craftsmanship. It moves with an elegance the rest of him lacks. It is the hand of something that does not belong to time. Varen does not strike, does not pass judgment. Instead, his fingers flex, and a panel opens in the throne beside him. A data crypt slides free, the surface ancient, inscribed with glyphs older than the Wrath itself. "Take it," he commands. I step forward, the chamber too silent beneath my boots. I reach for the crypt and lift it from its place. It is heavier than it should be, too dense for its size. Varen watches. His eyes do not blink. The Wrath's blood is slow. It moves but does not heal. It feeds but does not grow. That is the nature of all things that were built to last beyond their purpose. I do not understand his meaning, but I know better than to ask. "You will carry this," he says. "You will see what the Wrath hides, and you will answer, servitor, for the things you seek to know." The panel in the throne hisses shut. I bow once more and turn to leave. The ship does not feel the same. I carry something now, a piece of the Wrath's truth, and I am no longer certain I wish to know what it is. I walk the corridors of the upper decks like a man returning from a place where language no longer functions. The walls haven't shifted, but they look unfamiliar. The men haven't changed, but they move like strangers. It is not them. It is me. A crack has formed beneath the surface of the world I once knew, and I am the only one who sees it. I walk above it now, pretending the floor is solid. I do not speak of what happened in the throne chamber, not to Luth, not to the officers, not to the others in the ledger tier. The data crypt remains with me, its weight both literal and symbolic, like I've been handed the heart of the Wrath and told to keep it beating without instruction. In my quarters I decode it. The encryption is old, archaic, layered, constructed by minds long past, but my clearance and the key hidden in Varen's fragmented command grants me access. The data is not elegant, it is raw. Stacked reports, archived memos, internal orders scrawled in systems now half dead. What I uncover is not some revelation of cosmic scale. It is worse. It is banal. The debt system was not handed down by divine machine logic. It was not calculated by incorruptible algorithms or left behind by the ancient architects of the Hollow Lords. It was designed by Varen. Not Varen the bone-handed, the Hollow Lord as he exists now, but Varen the man. Before the rot, before the bone-white prosthetic, before his mind fused with the ship. The debt system was a tool, a method to maintain control after the collapse of the alliance between the Hollow Lords, when the Galactic War turned from an organized campaign into a scattered, endless feud between drifting empires. Men grew restless, revolts began, the ship began to turn inward on itself. The existing structures no longer held. So he created a ledger, a system of quantifiable obligation, a hierarchy of worth. At first it was functional. Order returned. But over time the debts grew longer, the metrics grew blurrier. Debt became generational. Entire families marked as assets, entire compartments reassigned from crew quarters to debtor containment. Obedience was no longer earned, it was calculated, and then, inevitably, corrupted. Varen began issuing debts retroactively, arbitrarily. Officers created new quotas to suppress unrest. Debts were assigned as punishment, as deterrent, as administrative error. And once a debt was entered, it could not be removed. The ledger had become sacrosanct, not because it was true, but because it was useful. I stare at the screen until the numbers blur. I think of my father, of the careful way he etched each tally, of the day he handed me the gauntlet and said, "Precision is justice." He believed it. I did too, but the ledger was never just. It was never even real. I sit for a long time in silence. At some point I leave the crypt sealed in a secure data slab, hidden beneath my bunk. No one will find it. No one is looking for it. Lord Varen will not follow up. He has forgotten me already. Outside, the wrath continues. I pass Lieutenant Harlan in the corridor near the command hub. He does not look at me differently. To him, I am what I have always been. I see Vesk again in the subdecks. He nods once. The machine priests pass me without pause. The officers forward their weekly reports. Debtors line up at the servitors' station, flesh marked with the bruises of labor. Nothing has changed. I speak to Luth only once. He's in the record wing, sorting through surplus quotas. He doesn't ask what I found. Doesn't need to. His eyes meet mine and he sees it written on my face. He nods once, solemn and unsurprised. "It's always been like this," he says. "But it holds. That's what matters." It's built on nothing. It's built on need, Brannick, and fear and structure. That's enough. He slides a report across the desk. Truth won't keep this ship from falling apart. When I return to my station, I open the ledger. Not the raw archives, those I lock away. I open the standard interface, the one assigned to my station, the one I use every day to record lives and losses. I scan the incoming data, the morning shift's totals. 3 men delinquent, 1 offered an arm, another has volunteered a grandson. The last is missing, unrecorded. I make a note to adjust his status to presumed expired. The system does not blink. The gauntlet glows as I sign the page, and then, for reasons I do not fully understand, I do something I've never done before. I scroll to the bottom of the ledger, open a blank field, and I enter a name. Thalen Brannick. Debt owed, unspecified. Quota, continuous. Payment, pending. The system accepts it without question. No alert, no verification. The ledger does not know irony, it only knows numbers. Later, as the next group arrives, thin men with hollow cheeks and twitching hands, I process them in silence. One of them offers labor, another obedience, another flesh. I mark each accordingly, assign them a return cycle, stamp the transaction. The last man in line is old. He cannot work. His hands tremble. His quota is shallow, barely enough to survive another rotation. I offer him a reduced rate. He bows his head and thanks me. It is not mercy, it is arithmetic. As I close the session, I sit for a moment longer at the station. My hand hovers above the console, fingers resting on the worn casing. The wrath creaks around me. The engines take what they require. The ship moves forward. I do not. If we are all owned by something, then let it be the record. Let it be the number. At least the number never lies. I log the next entry, and the ledger continues.